Hello everybody, welcome to this edition of Kev Thinking Out Loud, recorded Thursday, May 18th. Today I want to talk about inflation and pick up where we left off on the last blog I did in the winter time. You may recall that in that blog the topic I wanted to talk about was quantitative easing 2, QE2 as it was called, and what the central bank was attempting to do there, which was basically essentially to print money to try to defeat deflation, which was still a risk in the economy. And I mentioned in that blog that if that was accomplished, we should see asset price increasing and a return to inflation, which is a much more normal and healthy state. Well, as predicted, it seems to be working out that way. Perhaps we're seeing inflation hit the financial press a little earlier than I might have expected, but it is now a hot topic in the financial press, and I thought, and cited as something that we all should worry about by the financial press, and I thought that I'd give you my 2 cents worth on what I make of it. Essentially, I don't think that the risk of high sustained inflation is something that we should be too concerned about, and to help you understand why I feel that, I'll talk just a little bit about inflation in general and the 2 types or causes of inflation. One is called demand pull inflation, and the other one is called cost push. Starting with demand pull, you tend to see demand pull inflation only when an economy is at or near full employment and it has an inability to meet high and rising demand from consumers. Clearly this isn't the case that we're in right now, not in the developed world anyways, with unemployment still running in the 8 to 10% range or higher in many European countries. It just doesn't make sense. There's no pricing power as far as consumers. Wage demands are muted. Now this may be, an exception to this may be in China. I have heard it said from some of the economists that I follow that they are experiencing some demand pull inflation in China. But even at that, it doesn't make sense to me. If we really are in a global economy, which I believe we are, then that itself should be unsustainable because labor is mobile, production is mobile, and it seems to me that China may be at this point somewhat detached from the global economy, which may spell trouble in the short term or medium term for China if they're overbuilding in relation to the fundamentals. Cost push inflation is a situation where the price of essential inputs is rising due to supply issues. Now, I believe that cost push does partly explain the inflation we're dealing with. We see commodity prices, oil, gas, gold, food, all having gone up in the last little while, which is trickling into the inflation numbers. However, even at that, I actually believe that speculation is playing a meaningful role in that anyways. To take it to current levels just doesn't quite make sense to me. There is no new large restriction in supply of any of these things. Libya is a conflict in Libya right now, which yes, marginally affects production of oil out of Libya, but there's plenty of capacity, seems to be anyways, for other nations to pick up the slack, which they say they're more than willing to do. So essentially what I think is happening is a sort of replay of what happened in 2008 when we had a bout of inflation then that was based on rising commodity prices, which seems to clearly have been speculation in commodities driving the prices up, which created what I was calling synthetic inflation. In other words, not based on fundamentals, based on speculators driving up asset prices trickling through into other the goods and services that we consume. So like Ben Bernanke, the head of the central bank in the US, I do not believe we're looking at inflation as a long-term problem. The issues around inflation that we're seeing right now, although they're real, they show up at the gas pumps, they show up at the grocery store, are probably not, in my opinion, not the beginning of a long-term sustained inflationary problem. That is something you should see only in a much more mature stage of the growth cycle, which we're quite a ways from. So with that in mind, I don't expect interest rates to start going up as a result anytime soon. You know, we may see some marginal rising in interest rates, but a robust rise in interest rates to try to combat inflation is still a ways away, I believe. So thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned for future video blogs that should be coming in the next few weeks. Thanks a lot, and have a good summer.